Welcome to Building Better Cities, the podcast where we explore the evolving landscape of urban development and the crucial role that infrastructure and real estate investments play in shaping our communities. I'm your host, Kate Gasparo, and in today's episode, we're diving into the core dynamics behind mega urban development projects. Our guest, Adam Friedberg, leads Borough Hapold Cities team and has been at the forefront of some of the world's most exciting and transformational urban initiatives. From the revitalization of Lake Erie communities to the creation of Songdo in South Korea, Adam's team brings together engineers, economists, and policy experts to prioritize sustainable infrastructure and community growth in these ambitious projects. Join us as we explore the key elements that turn these mega urban projects into more than just plans on a shelf, and how we can identify the initiatives that truly help us build better cities. So Adam, even though we've known each other and worked together for the last few years, I don't think I know your origin story. Could we start there? Can you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today and the work that you're doing in city building?
I think it's an interesting story. I originally started as an environmental engineer working on designing systems to clean air, water, soil, designing waste systems and energy systems, even designing green infrastructure and bioswales even 20 years ago. Good fun, really. But I felt it was just odd because we're making money off of other people polluting in a lot of cases. So the more people pollute, the better our business was. I just thought that was really messed up. Why don't I choose another profession that can really focus on prevention and policy to prevent those polluters from doing what they do? So I chose to work for a large international British engineering firm in consultancy, and there have a much better understanding of what's actually happening around the world and be able to bring those best practices to the States and North America. I had the opportunity to work on some amazing projects all over the world, from working on a congressionally mandated report on green roofs. And that was always interesting because you have to write at a second to third grade level. What was the client told me? Working on Songdo, which is a brand new city in South Korea, to DC's sustainability plan, New York State's resilience plan in response to Sandy, to even creating a natural capital energy model for the UK government. Really cool, really awesome stuff. But I would say a lot of that stuff doesn't move along. Songdo did, but a lot of other things don't. Sometimes I always say things just tend to sit on bookshelves. And what I learned is the technical problems, they're difficult, but they're solvable. And it's only really half of the issue. I would say even less than half of the issue. And really how to get things done and how to move things along. So I joined Borough Hapold Cities team, where there were economists who can really speak dollars to clients. I thought that was really important. There were social scientists that understand communities, and a number of former high-up city government officials who know how to get things done and understand the politics of things. That felt like something I was looking for. From there, I had the opportunity to work with major city, county, regional, state government, and actually get things implemented and come up with some amazing policies and funding opportunities for clients that have been implemented. Having that unique understanding of all these things puts me in a position to understand how we can improve cities. Even if we want to start a new city, what does that look like? What is the ideal city? How can we make the perfect city?
Oh, that's so interesting that you say the perfect city. That means so many different things to different people. Can you talk about the work you've done thus far and the elements that you think are essential to designing the perfect city? And how have trends evolved over the last few years to get us to what people deem perfect cities?
I think more than ever, and I think it was starting to happen a little before COVID, but more than ever now, community outreach and participation is so important. Engagement, focusing on equity issues. Any solution you come up with, you really need to have a way to understand how it can improve the equity of people's lives and make the community better. Community first, I would say, has been critically important to getting projects implemented. A big one, especially post-COVID, is open space and public space. When we were all in lockdown, people were looking and hunting for just space, how to go outside and do something. Good news for landscape architects. People and clients are noticing how important the public realm is and creating open space where people are, really to prevent people from moving and leaving. And then I think What I really like now too is carbon, or we can call it greenhouse gases. It's finally playing a major role in our buildings and infrastructure decisions, not just operational, but also embodied carbon has really picked up. I remember working on a article, was it like 13 years ago on embodied carbon, and that ultimately got into the LEED system. Now people are really starting to pay attention to it. And in that case, it's a major supply chain issue that we're seeing a lot post-COVID, and understanding where your materials are coming from. It's a resilience issue, so that's really exciting as well. Seeing a lot of really cool adaptive reuse projects. That's another one. Existing buildings has become a lot sexier. I think, there's some great examples throughout the world and throughout the country. More and more people are focusing on adaptive reuse. As a consultant, the value of that type of work has increased as well. EV infrastructure, and more important, the different models around EV infrastructure, the old profit model compared to the venture capital model. You're seeing that venture capital model really take off, and not with Tesla, but with other companies as well. Then one of my favorites is the Bitcoin crypto craze, and how that's actually impacting, like, people want to build these cities. So we've been seeing a lot of these new cities prop up, or like these ideas around new cities prop up around crypto. People want something better and are looking for the perfect utopia. I think COVID kind of gave them that, hey, like, I don't like this. I want to do something better. The issue is, like, the definition of utopia for people differs. And in some ways, it could just mean figuring out ways not to pay taxes. Someone's going to have to pay for the infrastructure ultimately. That's what I say about those things. You can't get around everything.
You're so right. Even within a neighborhood, people want different things from public and private projects that are transforming the urban environment. And you and your team are often working with clients in communities that aren't your own. So how do you understand as quickly as possible the local stakeholder dynamics such that you can best advise your clients and make sure projects are going to be accepted by the community?
I think what's absolutely critical is engagement. You need to talk to people. And if you're not talking to people, you need to talk to people that talk to people and bring them into the conversation. People that really understand the communities and what they want. How there's major cultural differences. I worked on a project in Toronto years ago where there are cultural differences between New York City and Toronto. You need to understand those issues. What are those differences? What are the needs? I always say, as early as possible. Nobody likes surprises. That's another thing as well. Try to get in there early. Like I said, there's ways to do it without flashing your project up in the start. I'm working with a client right now in New York City. Amazing project that a lot of people want, but there's some controversial things to it, like any other project has. So the client's out there and really asking what the community wants, what the politicians want, what the stakeholders want. What can they do to make this site better for them? And there's going to be some compromises, and they're not going to be able to do everything. But if they can acknowledge that really helps.
This idea of who writes the future of our cities is fascinating to me. And you reference engagement as a way to democratize that process and really open it up and make sure many different opinions are part of forming these city building ideas. Now, I know a significant portion of your work is helping to develop new cities where there isn't exactly an existing community to engage with. These cities are built in the middle of really nowhere. So what does it look like to write the future of a thriving city, to attract people, attract industry without having a foundational community to engage in the development process?
I think that's a totally different element. It's a really good question as well, because it's new, it's different. One risk that I've seen with those types of projects is everybody ultimately creates Silicon Valley somewhere. And you're like, wait, do you want that monoculture? Is that what you want? That doesn't really work. Or if it does, it's very few instances where it does. In those cases, what you really need is a proper market analysis, understanding the type of people that would move to these places in the middle of nowhere, or why would they move into the places in nowhere? It requires a lot more deeper thinking, and sociologists and people that really understand people to really understand why they would move out there. I've heard some crazy things like, let's put a big concert venue out there. People are going to go there for the concert. Yeah, they will. And then they'll leave right away because there's nothing to do there. So you really need to, and infrastructure is not going to attract those people. There really has to be some really good cultural reasons of being there, I would say. And it's tough. It's why a lot of these new cities that spark up, unless they're located next to areas that are already at their maximum densities or capacities within a half an hour drive or bus ride or train, it's going to be difficult to make it work.
That really brings up the question of what it's like to work in our existing cities. What are some of the major differences, challenges, opportunities you see as you navigate between projects that are exclusively on new city developments, those out in the middle of nowhere, and the projects that are taking place in some of our most thriving metropolises across the country and the world? Now, working in existing cities doesn't seem as sexy as compared to those new city developments, but definitely more impactful since the communities you're working in are experiencing that evolution on a daily basis.
That's a good question. In terms of existing cities and the challenges, there are infrastructure challenges, right? Old infrastructure that you have to deal with. There's major historic mistakes. I can tell you, like there's right now too, we're in this craze in New York. Anything that Robert Moses did was a mistake. And you can see what happened as a result. We're trying to fix those things. We're working on a cool project in Richmond, the Richmond Bridge Park project, where there was a major race and cultural differences between the city of Richmond and the city of Manchester. And the point of the project is to take this unused car bridge and convert it into a park to connect these two neighborhoods like they've never been connected in the past. Thinking about ways to kind of bridge these gaps, bridge these cultural issues. Big other issues with existing cities, like the major budget issues. Some of them have housing crisis, for example. There's plenty of homeless on the road and it's plenty of homeless out there. And there's people that just need help. So trying to talk to them about sustainable infrastructure, it's not an easy sell. I think one of the worst things I've ever heard, I was on one project in Los Angeles where somebody came in and we started talking about equity and then they brought up species equity. I'm like, what? Basically, what it is, we use other plants and animals. They serve a purpose for humans, right? And it's like, no, they need to serve a purpose for themselves. And it's like, yeah, but I'm not going to sell that. And I remember the clients like, I can't sell that to people that like don't have homes or, or dealing with, major health crises or anything like that. So there's real world problems like that really big problems a lot of existing cities have to deal with. Lack of diversity of industries, not enough jobs, a whole slew of things that makes it really challenging to, to develop really some more sustainable infrastructure projects or a more sustainable or climate resilient city. And then when you mention what's the difference between working on existing cities and new cities, don't have to worry about historic issues. You don't have to worry about cultural issues. You don't have to worry about bad infrastructure. You can create it from scratch. That's why I think like new cities have the best opportunity to create the most perfect infrastructure. But how do you build new culture in the city? There's no history. What's great about existing cities is there's history. There's some bad history, obviously, but a lot of good history as well that really just shapes the city. And you kind of know where you're going and the type of people you're going to meet in some of these places that you visit. In a new city, it can be very bland. I think that's where you can design as perfect as you can get. You can really think about future climate hazards and other types of man-made and natural hazards. And you can design almost perfect infrastructure because you can really plan for it, which is great. That's a lot more difficult in existing cities with certain utilities that are difficult to work with or utilities and people that don't talk to each other. Whereas like in new cities, you can develop the governance of how that might work and set those programs up to make sure you have coordination between different utilities or even access to utilities. In old cities, it's a lot more existing cities. It's a lot more difficult. But what you have in those existing cities is that brand, history, and culture. So they're definitely different. When you think about it, the ultimate question is, especially for new cities, why do you want to move there? Why do we want to go there? And I think that's always one of the issues with all these new cities that pop up.
Given the long list of items that need investment in existing cities, what are the types of projects you see moving forward that are really receiving prioritization, funding, political and community support and will to get them not just to be designed and planned, but actually implemented?
Sometimes the projects move forward surprise you. Typically, the low-hanging fruit stuff is the type of stuff that typically moves forward. It all depends. The projects that have the most consensus are a really good example. Like, this is one of my favorite projects I've ever worked on. was our HEAT project, a non-for-profit based in Massachusetts that focused on electrification. They brought us in to help figure out what to do with natural gas infrastructure following the Merrimack Valley gas explosions, which killed a person and harmed a bunch of people in Massachusetts. There were already issues in Massachusetts with natural gas in the northeast part of the country, just not enough of it. So they were able to bring together all the natural gas utilities, the CEOs of these utilities, state and federal agencies and politicians like Warren's office, coming up with a plan that will allow them, instead of selling just natural gas, to sell thermal energy. To me, that makes sense. They do this in other parts of the world. Like, why can't we do that here? The issue is that there's some policies and laws that prevent them from doing it, which is the reason why we don't see a lot of these thermal energy systems in our cities, other than in college or closed corporate campuses. It's a real safety issue, and that's how I talk about natural gas now. Less on the carbon side, which is an issue, but it's a safety issue. Our pipes are old, and it costs a lot to replace, and utilities are losing money from natural gas. It's something that needs to be fixed. But getting consensus from these utilities, and it's really interesting that because, these CEOs of gas utilities went into this industry because it was a clean industry compared to coal and oil. So their motives were right. It's just over time, it's still a fossil fuel, and simple as that. But getting consensus with everybody saying we should do this. And now those utilities are piloting a bunch of these ground source thermal district energy systems. There's a policy and law in place to allow them to, once we're at a certain stage of the pilots, they'll change the law and allow these utilities to sell thermal energy. A lot of states have to do that as well. That was something that I felt, why it worked. You had a motivated who brought everybody that needed to be brought into the room, and they were representing the community. It was just perfect, everything from the RFP to how they organized everything. And we were there just to, bring in our technical and economic expertise. But I felt like it was a perfect situation. And so, we're trying to solve a problem, and we're having a complex problem, but you're bringing the right people in the room. That's going to really help make that decision, the ultimate decision. So that's a good example of something that you're able to follow through on. I think some cases, if clients have a lot of money to do something, they can move forward with projects. That's part of it. But then that's not all the time, right? We saw what happened in Amazon, New York, for example. That's a perfect example of a community killing a project. We saw what happened in Sidewalk in Toronto. The lack of transparency and lack of engagement at the early stage really hurt. There's a lot that goes into making projects successful. The clients that do the right thing, having the right people in the room, and inviting the right people to the conversations are the ones that are going to get the projects implemented. That's the way I feel. And then there's projects all over the world we work on that never get built. You kind of know they're never going to get built. You can't throw money at a problem. It's just not going to solve everything. I think that's a big part of people going, it's not just a technical problem. It's not just an economic problem. It's also the political and social drive and community drive to get some of these projects done. I don't know if that answered your question, but I think that if you bring everybody, the right people in the room, you get consensus, that's when the projects move forward.
Yeah, I think that really gets to the heart of the question. And if I could just probe a little further, you talked about what allows a project and what might prevent a project from moving forward, like community resistance. But are there elements that you need to be aware of as you move large-scale projects forward? It seems that what might motivate one part of a project might not work for another part. How does your team guide developers, agencies, clients while keeping that in mind?
I worked on a major project, the Erie Canal project. Elements of that are moving forward, elements of that stopped, mainly for political reasons. I think politics plays a huge role, and it's part of why understanding how that worked was really important for me. There are genuinely good reasons why projects don't move forward beyond the economics. That does play a part in it. I mean, you have probably the most important piece of infrastructure in this country. It opened up the west of the country. It created New York City in many ways. It created the first engineering school in the country, Rensselaer, where I went. It had such a major impact. But unfortunately, over time, with the invention of trains and trucks. You don't need water to ship. It takes a lot longer. And then you're left with this very expensive asset to maintain and being used for, I would say, mainly recreational boating and man-made a man-made water body that had so much influence on the watersheds from Buffalo to Albany. And so where there's issues, there's opportunities, and it has such a historic meaning in this country. It is important to people. So how do you celebrate it without commercial shipping? It's 350 miles long. You have to break things up. That's the first thing we thought about. Let's break this up into 3 different regions: the West, the Central, and the East. What are the issues in those regions? Because they're all different. We're talking about a lot of cities and towns that were built around the canal. Over time, as the canal was used less and less for commercially, they suffered. And so how do you bring back economic development in those communities? Coming up with ideas to do that. Ways for farmers that need fresh water, high economic output fruits and vegetables, because they'll have access to fresh water. How to take a wetland that was destroyed as a result of the canal system and restore it and bring back the biodiversity needs, or how to get communities out of floodplains. You can do a lot when you have control of the water. And so it's amazing, how you do that, how you deal with all these individual municipalities and communities, get buy-in from them, then study these things, study invasives in the canal system, and understanding that invasives in the canal system, you can bring invasives from the lakes, Great Lakes, to New York City Harbor, or vice versa. And that can have a major impact in the commercial fishing industry. So there's a lot of things to study, but if you break them up in segments and work with the communities within the segments, listen to their problems, listen to some issues of the people that have been operating the canal for so long, and you start to look for solutions that are already occurring, like, they were building the Empire State Trail across the Erie Canal. So how do you link a popular university to the city that the university is in? It was amazing to us that there was no pedestrian bridge to do that and connect them to that Empire State Trail. There's so many different solutions that will impact people's lives, improve their lives, get them out of the floodplain, reduce their flood insurance rates, put more money in their pockets in terms of economic output, creating better communities, celebrating the canal system, bringing the environmental justice communities to the canal system, allowing a bit more of a diverse group of people that come to the canal system. I think that was, all that, and it's comprehensive, and it took years to figure all that out. But I think what was accomplished was pretty good, and there's a lot more that can be done as well.
As you've worked on projects over the years, have you picked up on any types of indicators that signal early on that a project will move forward? We know that some of these projects are so lofty or so large that they'll get held up at some point. Are you honing in on what those indicators are for your team?
One good indicator as a consultant that works in this space is look at the mayor. And if you have a good progressive mayor that wants to get things done, then that's the city that you want to work in. I'd say right now in New York, it's very exciting to have Adams as mayor. We'll see what happens. But I think people are very excited. They've brought back a lot of good people, and things look like things are going to happen again. One good indicator is you look for the mayors that want to get things done in a positive, progressive way. And those are the cities I'm typically most attracted to, because you really feel like you can have an impact. I'm working on a project right now in Yonkers, and I haven't worked in Yonkers and it's been 10 years almost, or 8 years. And the last time I worked in Yonkers, I worked with director of sustainability, and he had direct access to the mayor. I was giving him data for something, and he turned it into a policy the next day. Just seeing that was so inspiring. And now the same mayor's last term, he's like, I want to go out with a bang. I want to do a lot of stuff now just to create my legacy. And that's the type of client you want to work for, because you're going to get things done. You're going to get things implemented, and these policies are going to pass and make the city better.
I think many people in this space are looking to create similar types of impact. And looking back over your career and sort of the trajectory of where you want to go, what does it mean for you to have a successful career in city building or urban revitalization or urban development, and the types of projects that you have and are going to select to do moving into the future?
My first response, unfortunately, depends on what you call success. For me, success is being able to implement things that will create more sustainable communities in cities and going forward. But there's others out there that just, success to them is how much money they can make off of the project. And yes, you want to be profitable, but you don't want to, you want to make sure it gets done well. I also think what I would look for in people, passionate people that want to make a difference. I work at engineering and consultancy, and I get to hire non-engineers. Not to say we have some great engineers, passionate engineers that have, different levels of thinking, but that diversity of backgrounds, diversity of education, and including that into your conversations really helps create a better product in the end. I think I'm lucky enough to be in that position to do that. When I meet people at conferences, I look for that question. Why do you do this? What do you want to make a difference? I would say there's always something about thinking about the consequences. And this is what I test my staff on a lot. Why are you making that decision? I think one of the easiest ways and the things in the world is sustainability. Yeah, let's do 100% renewables. Let's go. Like, yeah, you're going to bankrupt somebody. You're going to bankrupt the country. You're going to bankrupt the state. You're going to bankrupt the city. That can't work, right? So how do you do it in a more holistic way and really long-term way? I think that people really need to understand the impact of the ideas and decisions that they make. When you start hearing that from people, that's what you want to see. That's how you become more successful at this work. Really understanding why you're doing what you're doing. And in some cases, negative impacts, and hopefully a lot of positive impacts. It's really helping people understand that uncertainty and what are potential consequences. Like I said, positive or negative, what you're doing and how you're impacting the people that you serve or the people that you work with or the people that are going to occupy this space, I think is absolutely critical to what we do. As engineers, we can think we can solve all the world's problems, but we can't. We can help. So what are you doing that can improve people's lives, or potentially what are you doing that might hurt people's lives, and how can you do it differently to make their lives better?
Thanks for tuning in to Building Better Cities. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to hit subscribe so you never miss another episode. And if you could help spread the word by sharing with someone, it would mean so much to us. To learn more about our work, check out buildingbettercities.com. We're excited to keep the conversation going, so until next time, let's keep building better cities together.